we're not in the business of screening people out. We're in the business of calling people in, right? And so with that, how are we capturing those that otherwise would be screened out of our low-income programs?
I'm Carolyn Pars, clean tech communicator, coach, and host of Just Power, a podcast about creating a just transition to a clean energy future that leaves no one behind. If affordable, reliable, clean energy that benefits everyone is important to you, you're in the right place, my friend. We have the power to make that happen, and that's what's happening each week on the Just Power podcast. Welcome to the Just Power podcast. I'm Carolyn Pars. And before we get going today, I just want to say that as we're recording today, the LA fires are raging and people are suffering. And we wanted to send our prayers and good wishes and thoughts to all those that are affected right now. So with that, I want to welcome on our show today, Shiloh Costello, who is a true spark in the energy equity space. She is a manager of the Sustainable Communities at Sacramento Municipal Utility District, otherwise known as SMUD. That's what I'm going to say, SMUD. And it's a not-for-profit, community-owned electric utility, and it's the 6th largest in the United States, and it's been around for over 70 years. So there's a lot of history here, and I'm thrilled to have her on our show because of her deep passion combined with her positive, proactive, on-the-ground approaches to serving underserved communities. So welcome, Shiloh.
Oh gosh, well, thank you, Carolyn. I need to take you with me anytime I need an introduction. That was fantastic. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, that's how I feel. So it's true. It's definitely true. And I'm so excited that you're on today. And before we get into what's happening at SMUD, I want to just ask you about your journey, your energy equity journey, and how that became a focus for you.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this and have been over the course of the last year, just as we've been really doubling down our efforts in this space. And I thought back to growing up with my mom as a single mom in subsidized housing. And at the time, I didn't know what energy equity was. I wasn't, fundamentally, I didn't know, about the energy systems, but I did see my mom struggling to make ends meet. I saw my mom having to decide between putting food on the table and paying the utility bill.
Yes.
And that was something that stuck with me. And I have, dedicated my entire life to the nonprofit space. I oftentimes refer to myself as a recovering nonprofit exec because I spent a good majority of my career working with and in the nonprofit community, ensuring that people had access to a number of different benefits that create a sustainable life, whether that's affordable housing or education, working for the higher ed system of community colleges here in California, working for United Way. So my experience has been the nonprofit space, but it's just been a little under 6 years now that I made my way to the energy sector. And really what brought me to this space was the work that was starting up in the Sustainable Communities area within SMUD and here in Sacramento. And it was an opportunity for me to continue to serve the Sacramento community in a really inclusive and equitable way.
All right. So it started back in the kitchen, right? Yeah. With your
Truly.
mom. So often these things do. I know for me, many of my background, many parts of my background influence where I am right now.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. I want to ask you, just to set the stage for everybody, And in case our listeners might not know what energy equity is, right? Because some
Mm,
people
mm,
do ask me, what do you mean by that? We hear the word energy justice, and sometimes they're used interchangeably. So
mhm.
let's just put that on the table. What is energy equity, and how does your company view it?
For me personally, I think about fair and just distribution of energy benefits and burdens. And I think about that ensuring inclusive community participation in energy policy and decision making. Obviously, we want to ensure access to reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy services. For me, it also includes collaborating with our under resourced and overburdened communities, fostering that meaningful community engagement. We're actively working to eliminate barriers to energy access. So, for me, community resilience, supporting economic development, contributing to environmental sustainability for all. To me, that is energy equity.
That's fantastic. You've put so many pieces into that, right? It's more, I mean, it's energy burden, but also um, interaction with the communities, having
Hmm.
a seat at the table, actually
Absolutely.
helping to influence what our energy looks like. So that is where we're at. And that's where I believe in our energy transition needs to transition to, because our past wasn't necessarily that way, right?
Right.
So was equity, so you've been around for 70 years. Like that's a long time to, especially in, a publicly owned utility. Was
Mhm.
equity, maybe they didn't use that word, but was equity always embedded into SMUD's business model, like from the beginning, or was it something that evolved over time?
I think it was an evolution. I think, and yes, 70 plus years. I think what we have, like many utilities, we have a very strong low income program. We have served our low income communities for years with a multitude of programs and services, which we continue to expand today. I think about it's been close to 6 years or so ago. Our leadership at the time started to think about how we engage with our customers and our communities in a more holistic way, so that while we were supporting and providing services for our low income communities, we were also thinking about the other things, the other barriers that our communities were facing, which disproportionately impacted their ability to access clean, affordable energy solutions. And it was really that recognition that really started what is now our Sustainable Communities program. And what is really part of our umbrella of our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging plan and commitment here at SMUD, right? Having a really strong commitment to diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, both internally and externally.
Right. And you're heading that
Um,
up, I believe, right? That,
yeah, and
yes.
and just ensuring that the work that we're doing to support our customers and communities, the work that we're doing to support our employees to show up in an inclusive way in which people feel like they belong, really goes hand in hand to meet the needs of our customers and communities across our service territory. So it's our community owned, not for profit way has been something that we've been doing since the beginning. But to use the term equity or energy equity, I think like many utilities, it's evolved over the years for us. But really about 6 years ago now, so it feels like we've been at it for a little while, but still a lot to learn and still much to evolve in this space.
Yes. So that you did bring up like low income programs, and
Yeah.
utilities and energy providers have had low income programs for a while, right? They're been and they're growing and they're becoming more I would say, equitable, taking into all the aspects, the four justices that we might talk about. But how is this different, right? This low income, those are like programs, right? Like think of it like a spokes on a wheel, like a program here, a program there. But this equity is really systems wide, right? It's systemic. So to you, how is this different? Has SMUD embraced it that way as far as for their communities, like in the planning stages right from the beginning, versus just, I don't want to say another program, but the many programs that I've seen in our energy with energy providers?
Yeah, it may help to look back to, in 2019, as we stood at the Sustainable Communities program, we also created an interactive mapping tool. It's called our Sustainable Communities Resource Priorities Map. And it helped us to analyze a number of different data sets to help us identify the local areas within our service territory.
I saw that. That's on your website.
Yeah,
I liked that.
Yeah, the mapping tool allows us to pinpoint the local areas that are most likely to be underserved or in distress. And the reason why I bring this up is because income is one factor.
Okay.
But we're also looking at lack of community development, lack of affordable housing, lack of employment opportunities, lack of clean transportation, medical and health access, nutrition, education, clean environment. So when we look at our energy equity portfolio, we're taking a step beyond what we would traditionally look at, which is the identifying factor of income eligibility for our programs and services, and really looking at how to create a sustainable community through these various resources that are traditionally that communities are traditionally underserved by in these various areas. And so when you look at our mapping tool, I would say for us that live in the community, when we look at our tool, when we see the communities that are under-resourced or show up in our high sensitivity area, we're not surprised because oftentimes it's the same communities that have been historically disproportionately impacted, redlining, right? Other policies and procedures that have created our systems that are today, right? And so really it's about unpacking a lot of historical inequities and doing better to ensure that we have equitable and inclusive solutions for all of our customers throughout our entire territory.
Yeah, I love that you go beyond income, right? I mean, that's usually where it begins. And I've talked to some other guests on the show, and that's what the answer was. But there's this whole realm, like you said, this holistic way of looking at it because it's so many other parts to that. Right? And that map is very interesting. And I guess when you look at the map, I hope people will go to that because it's color coded, right? And you can see the different areas, the high sensitive areas and low sensitive areas. And how do you approach those areas differently with the customers, the diversity of customers in those territories? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, as of the census that came out in 2020, I think Sacramento is still in the top 10 of the most diverse cities in the nation. And so recognizing that and recognizing the number of various languages and cultures that are represented in Sacramento, we know that this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Right. So our work in these communities, whether they have access to affordable housing, but they may not have a strong tree canopy, which impacts their air quality, or they may not have clean transportation access. So we really look at each individual community's needs, and they create services and solutions in partnership with community-based organizations that will allow us to meet customers where they are. And oftentimes that is with specific energy solutions, and oftentimes that is with more traditional social services, wraparound services, because we're trying to make sure that they can really reach a quality of life that is important for a sustainable long-term health and overall wellness.
Yeah, that really struck me, that as an energy company, right? Uh, you look at things that are beyond energy when you're looking
Yeah.
at your customers. You're not just looking them as a ratepayer, right?
Right.
That you're looking at, you partner with other groups that may take care of or focus on, let's just say, wellness or mobility or other parts that come together for that customer. So it's not just this tunnel vision um, on just energy, but it's also this broader, you use the word holistic, more holistic way of looking at it, right? That is a very interesting approach, because it's beyond your business model, right, of just energy. So say more about that.
Yeah. I would offer that as a community-owned, not-for-profit electric utility, it is serving community is absolutely part of our business model.
Community first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Improving the quality of life for our
Ah,
customers is in
okay.
our mission statement. And so, and we don't do that alone. We are an energy provider first, but we have 200 plus community-based organizations who really are our frontline ambassadors to so many of our customers in need who can use our support. And so we're in community in partnership with those community-based organizations day in and day out. They are the trusted advisors to those customers, to our ratepayers, really, but to individuals who oftentimes need additional support. We go into somebody's home and we do an energy an energy assessment, and we're opening the refrigerator up to see if it's efficient. If we're seeing an empty refrigerator, our role doesn't stop there. What other means of support in a wraparound services type of way can we connect our customers to? Can we connect them to social services, to different food, whether it's food access or different affordable housing partners? Or a myriad of partners within that portfolio, because maybe our job one isn't food access, but we have some really strong partners in this space that is their job one. And so being there in community and partnership with them is what makes it's what makes us stronger for the community.
I love that. I love that. So with that, right, we're seeing that now that it's not just low income, right? There's a lot of programs for low income families and communities, but there's this middle income struggle, or middle income families struggle, that they're not maybe not eligible for a certain program, but they're experiencing energy burden, right? Have you been seeing this in your territory? What are you doing about it?
Yeah, we have. One of our I'd say key initiatives this year is our moderate income customers. And you said it perfectly. Historically, we've been really focused on those who have been screened in based on their income into income eligible programs. We offer a discounted program rate. We offer additional customer programs that allow for weatherization, energy efficiency, and electrification for those that income qualify into those programs. But you said it, if someone is income qualified if they're screened out of those types of programs, oftentimes they're struggling mightily to make ends meet because they don't have the support services that are often available to those who are screened in, right? And so we are thinking about it. It's like we're not in the business of screening people out. We're in the business of calling people in, right? And so with that, how are we capturing those that otherwise would be screened out of our low income programs? And so we've started to do some really interesting research and customer segmentation around what we're calling the moderate income group, right? Some folks refer to it as the missing middle, or I've heard it as the working poor, but we're focusing on that moderate income group, and we're actually doing some more granular segmentation around a low moderate, mid moderate, and high moderate.
Oh, good.
And as I mentioned before, there's so much diversity
Yes.
just in that mid group, just in that mod group, that it's not a one size fits all approach.
And none
When
of it
I'm
really is.
No, it really isn't, right? I guess if that's one thing you're going to hear me say on repeat, right? It's customized solutions for individuals within these customer segmentations. So we're starting on that journey. We're starting to really understand the customer within these various segmentations, and so really exploring some different programs and solutions to meet the needs of these customers.
Right. And it brings me to what you've mentioned a couple of times so far is the Sustainable Communities Initiative at SMUD, right? And where you're looking at closing that like disparity gap, right, in your service territories. And there's 4 pillars I saw, right, that you look at when doing that, which is, I have them right here: social well-being, healthy environment, prosperous economy, and mobility. Do you want to just touch on those? How did that come to be, right? And how do you see each one of those segments?
Yeah, we actually in this recent year, I'd say in the last 18 months, we took a look at those pillars and adapted them a little bit. And I would say you may be familiar, in 2021, SMUD launched a very aggressive and a moonshot goal of reaching zero carbon by 2030. And
Wow.
yes.
You and LA are like, you might have to fight that one out. Okay, who gets there first, right?
The part of that was really ensuring that that our equity focused approaches aligned toward our 2030 zero carbon plan. We made a commitment when we launched the plan that we would leave no community behind, and obviously that looking different for every community that we serve, because we're meeting those customers where they are along this journey. Right, where some may be ready to move to quick adoption, others are really in that learning and understanding, education and awareness phase. And we're seeing customers all along that journey. But I offer that because as we launched Sustainable Communities 6 years ago, but a few years later we launched the 2030 Zero Carbon Plan. It was an opportunity for us to reevaluate our Sustainable Communities program to make sure that we had funding pillars and impact pillars that really align toward our 2030 Zero Carbon Plan. And so we've changed those a little bit, and I would say even maybe a lot. But still, the premise around ensuring that we're supporting our customers in an inclusive and equitable way within this 2030 zero carbon journey and transition. But we're really focused on equity and environmental justice. We're focused on inclusive economic development. We're focused on regional workforce development, and then clean energy and STEM education. And so similar in that space. And so, but
it's morphed somewhat or refined here, right? Okay. Based on this big goal that you created, right?
Right.
All right.
Right. And so these 4 pillars really act as guardrails, if you will, for us as we're partnering with 150 or so community-based organizations in the Sacramento region. We're creating, we're investing in community-based organizations to expand our reach with our customers, all within those 4 pillars. And so we may be doing direct electrification work. We may be funding STEM education, clean energy education outreach. We're funding workforce development programs to ensure that there is a strong and viable workforce for the clean energy future.
Yes.
And then we're taking care of our small business, our small business community, ensuring that there is economic development programs and services to support them and keep them sustainable long term.
All right. All right. So it's definitely feels like it's more granular, more specific, very specific goals on what you're doing. So you talked about impact, right? How do you measure success with this? Right? There's all these, we have a lot of numbers on what's wrong, right? Now, do we have those numbers on what's right? And how do you do that? Like, what's the ways, especially the impact, right? How it impacted a community or family?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's something that we and other utilities, from what I understand, grapple with.
Okay.
Is output versus outcome, right? And I think I think historically, I think we can easily count the number of heat pumps that we install, or the number of individuals in our community that we train in clean energy jobs. We can count the number of Shine Awards that we offer a nonprofit organization to do work in the community. So we can count the different things.
Yes.
But really thinking about what is the long-term impact of those outputs, right? So taking the data, right, taking the outputs and moving to a space where we're really thinking about the long-term measurement around quality of life. Like, how is this output? How is installing that heat pump? How is training that individual in clean energy technologies? How is that impacting that customer long term? How is that impacting the vitality of our community long term?
Right. A whole other set of metrics here, right?
For sure. And I think there's a space and a place for both. I think you have to be able to measure, right, to track, to make sure that your programs are on track, right? But at the same time, I think we as an organization are really now starting to look at the long-term impacts now that we've been doing the work a little while, the longer-term impacts of those programs on the quality of life of our customers overall.
Yeah. I love that piece is being brought into a utility when generally that's not something they look at, right? I mean, there's a lot of engineers in utilities, right? And they do tremendous design work on how to make our grid work, right? Or get that generation station going. But like, how you feeling, a community member, or the impact is, like you said, long-term impact it has in the community. That sounds like a possibility for some entrepreneurs out there to start thinking about how to measure that well. So we can look at both of those pieces and how they come together, which brings me to engaging with your community, because that's what we're talking about. We hear the term meaningful engagement when you're designing something, but now we're talking also when it's done, right? Or it's happening. How's it going? But let's start with when you're designing a program, or we're looking at this energy transition and bringing our communities in. I don't see any real guidelines on that. Many providers are doing a lot of different things, some more, some less. So I just want to ask you, are there specific steps or best practices that you do to ensure a meaningful engagement with your customers?
Yeah, yes. In short, I think about centering equity in the work that we're doing, and that requires us to acknowledge and account for whatever starting line disparities that exist for those customers. And I always say, start by examining the relationship that you have with your community. I think about it like a bank account, right? And you can't make withdrawals from a bank account that you haven't deposited into. I mean,
That's
you
a great
can,
analogy.
but you're going to be overdrawn, right? And so I think about like, are you showing up in your community to inform only? Meaning, hey, we have a rate case and now we're here to tell you about
Yes,
it,
yes.
right? Or are you showing up in community and seeking their input, really deferring to them on as we're designing programs and services that will ultimately impact their lives? What are they telling us that they need to see in those programs and services? We may be the experts in energy and utility, but we're not the experts in our customers' lived experiences, right? And so
Exactly.
having those relationships with community, starting those now when you don't need anything or you're not trying to extract something, but you're there really in partnership, asking how can SMUD, how can I show up in community in partnership, to start to build a relationship. And it takes consistency, and it takes walking the walk time and time again. I think it's easy to sometimes we get in our silos and we just think about what's required in the energy space. But ultimately, we're here to serve a customer, and we really need that customer voice to be centered in the design of these programs and services that will ultimately impact their
How do
lives.
you do that?
I think for us,
Like a few
um,
examples that.
yeah, we've spent, and I think I want to say we're lucky because it wasn't luck. I would say we're fortunate enough that we had leadership that recognized the importance of community engagement very early on. So for years, SMUD has been out in the community. It's rare that you can go anywhere within the Sacramento community and not see SMUD part of community, whether that's at events or important things that are happening within our space. But I think so. First and foremost, we built a portfolio of really strong relationships with community-based organizations. And we showed up and we invested in the community with time, with resources. Sometimes we showed up and just listened if there was a challenge where we weren't sure what our role could be, but we knew as a community partner and as a provider that we should be there. And so sometimes we don't necessarily have to have a role. We just need to show up and be prepared to support
Yeah.
in any way that we
Just
can.
listening could be
Yeah,
big.
just listening, right? And not seeking to act, but truly being there, seeking to understand what challenges our communities are facing. And so that's been SMUD for years. And
Okay.
so and that's been an evolution. I mean, just within the Sustainable Communities portfolio, 150 or so nonprofits, but we have several other areas of SMUD that engage with our community-based organizations every single day. And so we have this community of practice, if you will, where we've been able to intentionally build trust with community leaders, and we've been able to go to them at times where we're seeking to understand what our customers are facing, what barriers exist, and how we can show up to
Sounds like
provide
a lot of
support for them.
nurturing that goes
Yeah,
all the way, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, right? Thank you.
Mhm.
I love hearing that because I think one of the biggest pieces in this energy transition as we create a whole new grid, right? What we're seeing it just transform is involving our communities and not just making assumptions on what's really needed. Yes, we all use energy, but but really involving and having them having a seat at the table. I think if that really happens, I think we've made big inroads. So
Absolutely.
with that, looking at maybe on a broader scale, like we're in an energy transition right now. And what is from your perspective, what is the importance of energy justice, of doing this in the transition? So people say if you don't do it, it just, our transition won't work, right? And other people say, well, we don't have enough time to do it because we have to decarb tomorrow, and doing all this community work takes time, right? But it sounds like you've kind of built it into your processes and like, this is just the way we do it. And we have a goal of 2030. So with that, I'll repeat myself. What's the importance of this whole movement to really embed equity, justice, equity, energy equity in our transition?
Yeah, I would say that SMUD was doing this long before Justice 40, and we'll be doing it long after, right? I think I'll go back to community owned, not for profit, right? We are here to increase the quality of life for our customers and communities. And how do we do that? We make sure that we're centering that customer voice in the design of the solutions and programs that impact their lives. And when we launched the Zero Carbon 2030 plan, we said one of our core pillars, right? We want it to be reliable energy. We want it to continue to be affordable. And we want to make sure that we leave no community behind. And in order for us to leave no community behind, we have to make investments, right, to ensure that our customers and communities can join us along that journey. And so I think for us, if you're starting by centering those who have been disproportionately impacted in the design first, I think if you can solve for those customers first, I think it's much easier then to solve for the rest of the customer base, right? Because oftentimes solving for those who have historically, traditionally not had access, what are those starting line disparities? What are those barriers that exist, right? Solving for those, right, will allow for greater access for all customers and all communities. So I think we come from a place of I think we have a really strong market rate customer strategy that really meets customers where they are, for those that are quick to adopt new energy solutions, that want to buy an EV. It's like, call SMUD first, we'll help you, right? That want to electrify their homes.
That could be your brand line, call SMUD first. Right?
Actually, it is. It's on a billboard, right? And so, yes,
right.
So we are absolutely strong in that space, and we're absolutely also strong in, I often say that we have a bias for action. Like, we like to move, like we like to get stuff done. And in that process, I think where we've really had to maybe slow down just a little bit, to your point, is we create time to engage with the customers who have historically not been able to participate with us, right? And really understand what are those barriers, and then how do we solution against those barriers in partnership, in community. And sometimes we take on that responsibility, and sometimes we do it in partnership with our CBOs, who were already in community, oftentimes providing a lot of the really important services that our customers need.
CBOs, just so people might not know what that means.
Community-based organizations. Yeah.
All right. So let me ask you this. Okay, what advice would you give an energy provider? Maybe it's not a municipality, could be, an investor owned. It could be a solar provider that's coming in and putting an array up, right? Wind. What advice would you give them to start on this energy equity journey, right? What best practices, how to begin? What would you say?
Oh gosh. I'm reminded of this quote that says every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. Every
Oh,
system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And so as I think about that, I often think about like, I think it's taking stock in what is your current system designed to get? And I think
Great
working,
question. I'm going to stop you. What
okay.
is your current system designed to get?
Yeah, it's perfectly
Duh,
designed to get the results it gets, right? And
right,
so it's kind of like doing the same thing over and over and
right.
expecting a different result, right? It's just a slightly maybe nicer way of saying it, but as we think about, centering equity or starting into this equity space and measuring our impact, I first think back to relationship with community. I think oftentimes as utilities and as a doer, right? We need to create a new program, and so we create the new program and we launch it. I think, we really have to build time. I would say utilities really have to build time and space for
Mhm.
community engagement, really intentional, thoughtful community engagement. If they're thinking about starting a new, energy equity program. They're thinking about how to make investments. I think taking the time to find individuals in the community who have a strong sense of what's happening in those various communities, what are the barriers that folks are facing, and really understanding like how to show up in those spaces and what types of programs and services to to build in order to support those customers.
Beautifully
Um,
said. Beautiful.
I just think it's, and I'll say again, not a one size fits all approach. And so being willing to think about like, how do we design, right? How do we design a system that is nimble and flexible and meets customers where they are along this journey, right? So whether it's scaled incentive approaches, right, or it's moderate income, or it's rapid neighborhood electrification, or it's helping small businesses electrify and get access to clean transportation, or it's working with nonprofits to support regional workforce programs. I think it's really understanding what is the community struggling with, just beyond the paying their bill, because that oftentimes is indicative of so many other challenges that that individual is facing in their
Uh,
life.
right. Yes. Uh, so here we are, 2025. Okay. And then looking at the year ahead, what's getting you excited?
Mm. I think a couple of things. We were fortunate enough to win a DOE GRIP grant, a $50 million GRIP grant.
All right.
And I think in large part it's a real testament to the strength of SMUD as a utility and also the work that we've been doing in the energy equity space. We had a really strong community benefits plan that we put forward in addition to a really comprehensive plan for the grant. And so we're making progress that'll go through 2028. So as you can imagine, that's a big undertaking, but something that we're really excited about. I think the other thing is in 2022 we launched the Community Impact Plan. And the Community Impact Plan is a now almost $70 million investment that SMUD has
Hmm.
made to ensure no community is left behind.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, it's a significant investment and one that we will be working on really till 2030. Right? So this has legs. This is a formal commitment that SMUD and its leadership has made to ensure that we are really walking the walk and talking the talk when we say leaving no community behind and making sure that we're meeting customers where we are. part of that
That gets
holistic.
me excited just hearing that, because I'll tell you why. You've said this a few times during our interview, that the leadership had made decisions, right? And I asked another person who will be on in a future podcast about that too, and she said the same thing, right? So that's such an important ingredient to this movement, is having leadership give the green light, be on board for this instead of like checking the box,
Oh
right?
gosh.
So I just wanted to make that point. That's so key, that you've invested $70 million in a SIP. I thought I heard it was CIP plan to, so no one is left behind.
Yeah. Thank
That's
you. Yeah, Carolyn, thank you so much for elevating that leadership component. Because I joke sometimes and say I have 5 bosses for the community impact plan, which is there's 5 executives that are really sponsors of the community impact plan. So you're thinking about enterprise wide. You have 5 of our executives who are there day in and day out. Really passionate about this work, ensuring that we have options that can increase energy affordability, creating programs and opportunities and jobs that are aligned with our 2030 zero carbon plan, and connecting and creating deeper, more meaningful relationships with our community so that ultimately they can be ambassadors for the clean energy future as well. And so
I think I'm going to move to Sacramento.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
Come on. We'll have you. You are welcome.
Definitely
You are welcome.
Or visiting for a while. So you guys are doing so many things right. I love it. I hope people are listening, take some of this really good, information and the heart behind it, on the intentions behind it, and really run with it, right? And it starts with making a decision that you're going to make a difference.
Yes.
Okay? And that's what I hear. So I get so excited I knock over my mic every time. So in closing, let me ask you, if you could make a mark, Shilo, right? You can make a mark in energy equity, this work you're doing, right? Leaving no group, no person behind, that would leave a lasting legacy. What would that be?
I think about 2030. We're in 2025 now, and I think about the year 2030, and I think about what it looks like for all of our customers and communities to feel included in our clean energy transition. I think a lot about leaving this world, but in particular, leaving my Sacramento community where I was born and raised better than I was born into it, right? And as I think about the impacts, the decisions that we're making, the impacts that we're having with these programs, I think about the people. I think about our customers. I think about our people, that the people that are represented by SMUD's territory, and ensuring their access, not just to affordable and reliable energy, and that's so important. But also, how much more can we be doing to connect them to a number of really important and meaningful resources throughout our region, right? Really creating that community of practice that brings folks together from government, from utility, from nonprofit, right? Community grassroots organizations, community leaders. We're all working toward the same goal. So I think, and that's just 5 years from now, right? We're on a sprint. But I think about getting there, and I think about what it looks like to create a real equitable system where folks have access to, when they're excited about, when folks get excited about energy efficiency, electrification, and EVs, and transportation, and clean air. right? That
Yeah.
that
What we
folks
want for
don't,
everybody, right? Clean sky, clean air, clean
right?
food, right? And
And folks don't have to leave their neighborhoods to reap the benefits of those sustainable
Mm,
features, right? It's
yeah.
like they can stay in the comforts of their home, where they can manage their energy usage, and they can also step outside and see our glorious tree canopy. They can breathe the clean air. Feels a little woo woo, but I don't know. Like
I
that's
love
where I am.
it. It's basic, what we all need and we all deserve, and it's rightfully so. It's our
Yeah.
birthright for that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on our show today. It was just a delight to speak with you and hear all that you do, and you're such a rock star in this. Um, I close the show by saying, which I'm going to probably, by saying we're all in this together.
Mm.
You've really proved that today, right? The approaches that you do at SMUD, and personally we like, it's community. We are all in this together. So my friends, right? I hope you're listening. I hope you've taken some notes, listening to Shiloh today. Everyone deserves clean, affordable, reliable, sustainable energy, right? That is our birthright. And we're all in this together to make it happen. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to Just Power wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really loved it, leave us a review and tell everyone you know about our podcast. It's going to take all of us to create a clean energy future that leaves no one behind.
The Just Power podcast is brought to you by New Mexico State University and Mind Over Markets, helping clean energy, clean tech, and regenerative businesses craft clear and compelling messaging that scales. Want to continue this conversation with Carolyn? Follow her on LinkedIn and follow the Just Power podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and on our YouTube channel. And for more intriguing conversations, follow New Mexico State University's micro-learning social pages on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube.